Around 2 years ago, I posted this video. In it, I explored the whole concept of video game backlogs and proclaimed in it very proudly that in 1 year's time, I would scarf down over 80 games, over 1,600 hours of estimated gameplay, that I would finish my gaming backlog. I made a live spreadsheet so that over the year you could check from home to see what I was playing and how close I was to finishing. A year later, I posted this video, part 2. In it, I told the story of that year, month by month, what I played, what went wrong, what went right, how it affected me as a person, and above all, I relayed to you my advice for how to handle your own backlog as someone who had ventured into the belly of the beast. They're still there, you can go watch them if you want. Many of you have watched them, but you don't need to have seen them to enjoy what you're watching right now. I'll recap what's most important. But that does bring us to today. What exactly are we doing here? The backlog's finished, right? At least according to the title and thumbnail last year. And in many ways, yes, it was. I finished the backlog in the same way that one finishes doing the dishes. The job is never really done, though. There will always be more games. Plus, I didn't even really beat half the stuff on the list. I was dropping games like Nintendo has been dropping lawsuits. I was removing games from the list as I discovered how absurd a 1,600-hour goal was. Yes, I did clickbait you. Thank you, angry comments, for pointing out how much I just cut from the list. Even if the point of that video was to explore how impossible trying to speed through every game you want to play is, and how jamming that many experiences back to back to back completely devours the point of existing in the first place. These are video games. I'm supposed to be having fun. Why am I thinking about my inevitable death? It was a fun time. And despite it being the longest video I have ever made, I had an absolute blast putting it together. It was a saga. And because of that, I almost immediately wanted to do it again whenever it was done. So, here we are. I secretly did another backlog this year with some key differences, and we're gonna run it back. Now, considering how well those original 2 backlogs did, a lot of you might see this and go, wow, Daryl, you're really milking the whole backlog thing for views, aren't you? And I'd respond, how dare you? How dare you suggest something so nefarious? That is extremely offensive. But you're right. This video will look very similar to last year. I'm going to tell you a story. Month by month, I'm going to take you through what I played on this year's backlog, how it went, where it worked, where it didn't, what I learned, what the man games were, and critically, how it was different from last year because I took a much different approach this time around. And once I'm done recapping the year and we reach the big finish, well, I'll keep that a secret for now. But it will involve your input, so be ready. As I started writing this, I realized that between 2 separate backlogs at this point, I have a lot of data to work with, and in using that data, we're going to look forward to 2025 and also talk about more ways that you can realistically attack your backlog. So with all that said, let's rewind to about a year ago.
Well, that was fucking miserable. Yeah, thank God that's over. Same time next year.
The biggest takeaway at the conclusion of Backlog Part 2 was that the strategies from Backlog Part 1 worked with a few exceptions. The method of compiling games you want to play on a spreadsheet, adding an estimated time to beat, and a few other data points of your choosing helps you overcome choice paralysis and actually pick something to play. And furthermore, writing your thoughts about them afterwards helps preserve the experience so that you don't just completely forget about them. Making that list, organizing your thoughts, and prioritizing what games you actually want to play most takes that insane pile of wish lists, unplayed purchases, unfinished starts, and upcoming titles, and provides a Looney Tunes slap of clarity for what you actually want to do. However, the big mistake I made in 2023, in a shock to no one but fucking me, was that 1,600 hours of games. Making this list live and open to the public, and promising that it would be done within 1 year added a substantial amount of stress to my experience. Much of what I wrote last year was kind of personal. Trying to do this by November took a putrid, gaping bite out of my emotional well-being. So I pleaded with you all at the end of part 2 that if you plan to do this, do not place a time limit on your backlog. If you stick with your list, have some discipline, and just enjoy yourself, your time might go like that final October did for me when the stress subsided. I was left with good backlogging habits, but suddenly I was no longer in a rush. Fun was being had for the first time in months. With that in mind, if you remember this final screen from part 2, 22 games remain on the list, stuff that after the shitstorm that was this project still interests me. Here it is, if you're curious, and you'll notice that it's much simpler. I don't list my hype for each title or any of all that other data, just simply how long is it and do I own it. This is to be a much more casual, less intimidating list. My new plan, I decide, is to drastically simplify this process and ride my new wave of discipline into the year and play a ton of games. Without the timer, without the public spreadsheet, without the knowledge that hundreds of thousands of people are awaiting the results, without any pressure. I turn on my Switch, I get cozy, I begin the very first game on this new backlog, and I am off to the races. You're going to hear me refer to this list a lot today as the original 22, and the reason is because the first thing I play, and in fact a great many things I'll play this year, are not on that list. Xenoblade Chronicles Future Connected. Appropriately, this backlog, like the last one, begins with Xenoblade. It only takes me about 10 hours to knock out this DLC, and it's fine. I enjoy seeing Melia take a larger role since she was my favorite character from the first game. However, it's oddly a slight letdown because the entire reason I booted up is because I am expecting it to be part of the setup for Xenoblade 3, one of the games on my list that I plan to get to in the spring. But it really just seems to be a nice cherry on top of Xenoblade 1. Nothing about it screams loose ends, you know? I think I played the wrong DLC, but nonetheless, I do have a delightful time. The next game I play is not a delightful time, but it is one of the most important games I'll play in 2024. One aspect of the backlog from last year I keep around is writing my thoughts out immediately after I've played a game, and upon finishing Nier Replicant, the first words I've written are, "I've never played a game this magnificent in so many ways that just absolutely steps on its own dick this much. This should be a masterpiece." And I think from a thematic perspective, it is a masterpiece. Yoko Taro explores hatred and loneliness and war in such a unique and potent way. This game touches me unlike anything else I've ever played. I go on to write a whole video about it that's, well, not to toot my own horn, but anyways, sort of the real point of the game is that it asks you to play the whole second act again, and when you do, it completely recontextualizes your actions from the first time around. It's a little repetitive, but the payoff is soul-crushingly powerful, a twist I'll probably never forget. But then, it makes you do it all a third time to unlock easily one of the coolest parts of the game as well as arguably the true ending. But first, you also have to collect all of these weapon stories, which, you know, many people will be into, but I cannot stand errand running or the tedium of having to beat a game 3 whole times like this. Now, for all of my complaining, I also wrote, combat was sex noise, music was chocolate breast milk, character design was ice cream on the beach, story was Q-tip in the ear to get that tight little itch. So, you know, interpret that as you will. Probably still a man game, despite it all. One game crossed off, onto another. Probably one of the most noteworthy additions. You see, just before I constructed the original 22, I revisited that list of games that I had removed from the backlog last year based on lack of interest, the list that people were really angry about. I was surprised and elated to find that there were very few, if any, that I regretted eliminating. A lesson for you there is that if you really want to play something, you probably will. If it sits on your list too long, maybe listen to your gut. You can always add it back later. One such add it back later game for me was Alan Wake, and that is a decision that I am extremely grateful for. I won't linger here too long since I talk about it and all of the other Remedy games pretty extensively in this video I write a little later in the year, but I will say that nothing could prepare me for the quirky, terrifying, simultaneously kinda lame yet extremely cool rabbit hole that this game sent me down. I roll credits on Alan, look at my list, and realize that I'm already making a much better pace than last year. Of the 22 games I have listed, I now have 2 pretty sizable ones knocked out, with plenty of time for a third one before December ends. So to keep the momentum going, I look at the how long to beat totals and logically decide it's time to play. What if instead I do something I haven't done in over 5 years? I'm going to replay a game. The Alan Wake vortex swallows me, and because I am extremely sick with the flu on Christmas with no self-control, I boot up Control, a game that I have already beat. A damnable sin last year, mind you, I can't waste that kind of time, what? But this year is different. Control is the perfect complement to my feverish haze, the shape-shifting corridors, the horror-infused everyday objects, the uncanny lore all swaddles me up like a baby. I am drowned in a wave of nostalgia for a game that I haven't played in 4 years, and above all, I am thrilled that I can just do that now. I don't have to constantly be looking ahead to the next thing. It is such a massive relief to not have a deadline or an audience or an expectation. My eyes close, December closes, 2024 opens, and the backlog is suddenly just a suggestion. With the holidays and my terrible fever behind me, it's time to write a video. I'm still all fired up about Nier Replicant, so I decide to play a game that I think might be a good counterexample to one of its main themes. I try a game called The Last Guardian, made by the same folks who did Shadow of the Colossus. I wouldn't call it a great game, but I would call it a fascinating experiment. I spend so much of this game trying to understand how a frustrating AI monster works, only to at some point realize that it now understands how I work. Despite all the frustrations, this gap in communication made for some of the most genuinely rewarding moments I've seen in a video game. Next was another replay, albeit one that I already had planned. Final Fantasy VII Remake, while on the list, was still a replay from my run through it in 2020. It simply had to be in front of me again with the Rebirth release date on the horizon. This is actually the moment I have the idea for the whole Forget a Game video, because I am shocked at how little of this game I remembered. In many ways, it feels like my first time playing it. Arriving at Aerith's house gives me the little tingly butterflies. Kicking ass as Tifa makes me feel like a bad bitch. Spending time with Barrett reminds me that he might be the best damn character in this story. My soul is ready and full to the brim after playing this. Man, January closes. I only played 2 games, which is a little disappointing, but they were longer and I don't care. It's progress, and I'm as happy as a divorced dad in a motorcycle dealership. Sorry, y'all. Spam call. Don't you hate getting those? How do these schmucks even get your number? If only there was a company that could both sponsor this video and protect me from the risks of spam and other forms of harassment. Oh, would you look at that? Odds are your personal data is already out there getting scooped up by countless data brokers. Corporations that collect massive chunks of personally identifiable information from across the web like government public records and social media. They compile and analyze your data, then sell it to other interested data brokers or organizations, which put you at risk not for just spam calls and political texts, but doxing, swatting, and identity theft. DeleteMe has made it their mission to help you keep your information yours. They offer a subscription service that not only removes your data from hundreds of data broker websites, but also regularly sweeps them to ensure that your data stays off them. I personally choose DeleteMe because I had a bit of a doxing scare a few years back, and DeleteMe gives both myself and my family the peace of mind and privacy that we all deserve. Plus, anything that wards off the nagging waves of scam emails and politically charged text campaigns is an absolute W in my book. So don't miss out on 20% off DeleteMe consumer plans when you go to joindeleteme.com/Daryl and use promo code Daryl at checkout. That's joindeleteme.com/Daryl, code Daryl. Thanks again to DeleteMe for the sponsor. Now back to business. February begins with a layup. I see Final Fantasy VII Remake integrate on the list. It's short, this world is fresh on my mind, no brainer. Yuffie is adorable, I wasn't ready to see her cry. That's okay though, another one down, 18 games left. I look at the list, I really look at it. I open my eyes a little wider. It's still there. I can play any of them. I then decide to play Bloodborne, because it's a game I've started like 3 times now, and it's high time I properly... Whoa, what are you doing? Daryl, the list. You have to play the list. That's probably not going to be any good. Silent Hill, the short message, is a short game that... Listen, there are pieces of this that are inspired, other parts are a little tedious. I finish it in one sitting and the story is well worth the 90 minutes it takes to play, especially since it's free. But hey, another game down even if it's not properly on the list. However, now I decide it's time to focus on the list. Maybe I'm not feeling Bloodborne, that's okay. Maybe it's time for The Last of Us Part 2, since I still don't know what everyone was so upset about back when it came out. Alan Wake 2 is one of the most masterfully crafted, detail-oriented, complete games I have played in a very long time. I find myself once again swept off my feet and taken on a devilish adventure. Survival horror is a genre I have found myself falling in love with since this whole Backlog project began, especially those that explore metaphysical spaces that reflect the main character's subconscious, and that is exactly what you get here. A man fights his demons, a woman finds herself accidentally folded into the nightmare. The power of rock and roll might be the answer to all of their problems. It is so silly, yet so unbelievably captivating. Man, watching the threads of Alan Wake 1 and Control weave together here has me feeling a way I haven't felt since the early days of the MCU. 10 out of 10, not on the backlog, but does that really matter anymore? In realizing this, I finish off February with 4 more games. I'm on fire, and none of these are on the original 22. Balatro is a poker roguelike that, wait, is it Balatro or is it Balatro? Bodacious is a poker roguelite that makes creative cheating addicting. You've probably heard of it, I did, and that's all it took for it to jump to the front of the line. Call of the Sea is a game I played on a whim. A woman goes to an island in search of her husband. Supernatural shit goes down. I solve some puzzles, help her find some answers, and the final quote of the game is something that sticks with me to this day. The Exit 8 is a jaunt through a liminal subway station where you have to take note of these subtle differences around you before you can escape. The anomalies you find are unsettling, but it's almost more chilling when you don't find anything. Because if you're wrong, you have to start over. It makes you start hyper-analyzing and seeing patterns where there are none. It makes the ordinary terrifying. But not as terrifying as... To all Tekken players, as someone who fancies himself a Street Fighter player, I was not familiar with your game. Tekken 8 is my latest fighting game addiction, and it regularly drags me down to hell with it over the next few months. Learning this game comes extremely slowly to me, because in contrast to Street Fighter, there is so much more room for offensive creativity. Your move list is hilariously long. You can move along the X, Y, and Z axis, which opens up sidestep plays like this. And because your moves do more damage at lower health, and because it's a best of 5 instead of best of 3, and because combos can get pretty long, momentum is everything, creating some thrilling comebacks. I choose to main Elisa simply because she has this command grab. And chainsaws. She is the silliest character, I love her, and until they put Tifa and Waffle House in the game, she will be how Tekken 8 makes me feel like a bad bitch. February was incredible, and I barely even touched the proper backlog. Now we're on to March, and March is...
Ah, shit. I did it again.
I start Final Fantasy VII Rebirth in March. I sneeze, and then suddenly it's May. This game devours my life. It drives a bus right into my everyday routine. It snatches me up like a hawk would snatch up a tiny rodent, and I let it. Because unlike Persona 4 last year, which stole 2 months from me, I willingly give Final Fantasy VII Rebirth 2 months. It was actually about 6 weeks, I just jumped to May to be dramatic. I also squeezed in Dead Space Remake in April, which was everything I could have hoped for and more. I thought it was spectacular and kind of the standard for remakes, honestly. And Super Mario Wonder, which is a safety hazard because it had me smiling so much my face hurt. I also vacationed and went to a Magic the Gathering convention in there somewhere, but Rebirth was my spring, and unlike last year, at no point did my backlog sitting stagnant bother me. I cannot tell you how marvelous this time was simply because all of the pressure to finish a list was gone. Instead, I could just savor the moment. Final Fantasy has always stood out to me in 3 big ways: music, setting, and characters. Characters being the driving force, the other 2 complementing them to tell the story. And the characters in this make this genuinely feel like a journey. Not the open world, but how the people themselves change and deal with their own bullshit. In most open world games, this mission of escorting a dog across the map would be a massive pain in the butt. But hearing this banter about how Barrett's going to handle Marlene moving out when she grows up made it one of my favorite side quests.
You're silly, Daddy. He's gonna fail you. Oh, I can't let you go. I just can't.
Barrett, get your shit together. Marlene's barely out of diapers. You've got time.
Right. I'm just getting worked up over nothing.
You see these characters just hang out and actually build that friendship that is so often later plot armor in Japanese storytelling. You are one of the gang, so when the plot thickens and the stakes rise, you actually feel a deep pit in your stomach. I cried on 3 separate occasions and threw my hands up clapping at another. Arriving at Cosmo Canyon and hearing the remade music for the first time was a spiritual experience. The Golden Saucer was a spectacle in every sense of the word. I need to play Queen's Blood in real life. I will throw my money at you, Square. Especially since it has a fucking mulligan feature, unlike Pokemon TCG Pocket. And when Zack, Ooh, I've got to relax. I don't want to spoil anything. I was a crumpled, teary-eyed mess by the time the credits rolled here, and yeah, it's a man game, in the purest sense of how I came up with that running joke 2 years ago. On a personal level, this game meant so much to me, and I'm reminded that the entire point of these Excel sheets is not to clear out rows, it's to find moments like these. Oh yeah, May. Let's get to May, actually. Here are the stats from March and April. To regroup, there are 16 games still unplayed on the original 22. I'm playing quite a bit, I'm putting in a lot of hours, but the list keeps getting skipped for either new stuff or stuff that I just find spontaneously more interesting. It almost feels like having something on the list is a surefire way to not actually play it. And I don't know if you've noticed this or not, but that's exactly how I've been treating it. I'm not adding stuff to it. I'm tracking what I play, sure, but you're not seeing me do like I did last year and broadcast my additions and subtractions each month because there haven't been any. It felt way too final to do so, you know? In fact, I know it kind of goes against what I said when this whole thing started, but I'm just wishlisting stuff left and right. I'm waiting for stuff to go on sale, I'm waiting for release dates, I'm waiting for demos. The tried and true method I came up with, for me at least, is morphing a bit. The O22 begins to act as a, if I have nothing else going on, I'll default to these list, and that changes things. I'm not sure what to do with that just yet. Foreshadowing for later. So in order to simultaneously not worry about it and also kind of address it, I start Xenoblade Chronicles 3. I won't finish it this May, but the opening act is promising. I can tell I'm on the cusp of a grand, sprawling adventure. But since it's on the go, I allow it to be a slow back burner game. With that in my back pocket and the pressure of the O22 pacified for now, I start Stellar Blade, a game that I've been following since it was called Project Eve back when they dropped this incredible trailer overflowing with crunchy combat, thrilling music, otherworldly visuals, and a lot of other things in 4K. This comment sums up my thoughts exactly. I've been amped for this since the original Backlog video. You can still go back and hear me mention it. I can't sit here and say that Stellar Blade is a stellar game. It has a lot of flaws. The story is confusing, the side quests are tedious, the characters are drier than a Popeye's biscuit.
Well, I guess that settles that. All right then, let's head to Zion.
Yes!
But somehow, despite that, like a Popeye's biscuit, I still stuff my face with this game. The combat is somehow both sing-songy and visceral. It plays like a violent dance. Because of this, the bosses are extremely fun. The setting and the music work together to craft some truly memorable vibes. The main character is... Alright, look. I'm not gonna pretend I didn't enjoy the views. The bakery is open for business, make no mistake. But for what it's worth, as much as you'd think a character like this would be over-sexualized in this game, somehow I felt more uncomfortable with Pyra and Mithra and An Takamaki and other cutesy anime girls that find themselves in precarious situations. Eve's character was treated with respect. There was never any wardrobe malfunction. No characters made passes at her or were caught staring at her chest or asked to paint her naked. She was just a sympathetic badass that happened to be a pretty girl. Sure, she's built like an Olympian, but so is Cammy in Street Fighter or Samus in Metroid. I think there's a distinction between beautiful, strong characters and characters that are treated as sexual objects, if that makes any sense. But then you've got all those outfits in the game and the Master Roshi cam. I don't know, man. I'm still sorting out my feelings on this. If you want that video, let me know down below. But one thing that is clear, I did feel like a bad bitch playing Stellar Blade. That felt like a big tangent. Though speaking of tangents... Children of the Sun lets you shoot and control a bullet and direct it into a new target so long as you hit a new target with each line. It's a shooter that plays like a puzzle game. You'll find yourself plotting out optimal vantage points to set up these ludicrous routes through windows and over buildings and around shields and into gas pumps, and it's just so good, man. King of the Bridge sees you play chess against a troll that cheats, so to beat him, you have to play by his rules, therefore not cheating. But if you catch him cheating by his definition and therefore potentially playing by actual chess rules, you can call him out on it and take a turn however you like. This stupid little game makes me alternate between laughing and cursing at a rate I've not seen since Mario Party. Highly recommend. Between these 4 games and remaking a video on Sans that no one watched, I don't have much spare time this month, so I don't play as much as I'd like, but with Xenoblade going, that's okay. Especially since next month... Actually, that'll be later in June. First, it's time for... I don't talk about this much, but Paper Mario The Thousand Year Door is probably the game I've replayed the most over the years. Every time I was sick growing up, my mother would take me to Blockbuster and I'd rent The Thousand Year Door. Every birthday, we'd rent The Thousand Year Door. Every straight A report card, Mom, can we rent Paper Mario? Why didn't my mom just buy the damn game? Chapters of this story are intertwined with chapters of my story. I climb Hooktail's castle and suddenly I'm home after Little League baseball practice. I roll into the Glitz Pit and now I'm back in college playing during finals week to de-stress. So as you can imagine, seeing it on Switch and being able to play it on the go in full HD with a completely remastered soundtrack has me feeling like God picked out a timeline just for me. It's wonderful. I can't stay here too long or I will cry at the music. Another game down, and before I know it, we are a few days from the release of Elden Ring: Shadow of the Erd Tree, the Full Metal Alchemist DLC. I realized that accessing it requires certain bosses to be beaten, and as someone who has finished all the main game, I'm not worried about it because I've beat them all.
You hit New Game Plus. Oh, fuck.
I almost don't play this DLC, but after remembering that I am in fact a bad bitch, I realize that beating these couple of bosses again won't be a big deal. I go pick up my Honda from Melina, I make quick work of Radahn, death comes from Moog, they're easy somehow. I enter the DLC thinking,
Am I him?
I was not him. This DLC hates me more than I hate Jerry Jones. I spent 38 hours on this 4K 60 FPS fuck you Daryl campaign, but you know what? I needed this. I needed to jump through lightning and land one of the final blows on the dancing lion. I needed to knock Rolana into a rack of spears like it was a bar fight scene. I needed to sit among these flowers as I reflect on one of the most intense boss fights I've ever taken part in. You mean I beat that thing, man? I needed to suffer through whatever this was for a 2-minute cutscene. This DLC was incredible, and once again, the locations in this world just continue to make my jaw drop. I'm sad it's over, but honored to have been in the Paper Mario remake and Elden Ring timeline. Thank you, Elden Ring. Forever a man game. In the spirit of clarity, I don't play a ton of games in July because of reasons that I'll get to in a bit. There was some MTG in there was some working on a video in there, I started reading this series in there was some real life stuff in there, but there was one game I do play. And before I tell you what it is and you judge me, I need you to use your imagination. Think of a game franchise you love, something with multiple entries as a series. It means very much to you despite what critics might say. It is a series that you will likely pick up every time on day one when a new entry drops. Now imagine that it completely ends. Imagine if Nintendo just said, no more Zelda ever. There was a lawsuit. If Square said, we are done with Final Fantasy. We no longer have the rights to any of the characters because we didn't cross our T's and dot our I's. And then imagine if 10 years later, your favorite franchise came back with a brand new entry, legalities resolved, and a whole new generation of tech to make it better than ever. This is what I experienced when College Football 25 was confirmed for July 2024. And if you don't care about sports, I get it, here's a timestamp to skip, but as someone who has watched this dumb, wonderful sport since I was in diapers, I'm thrilled to see it back. In a nutshell, in 2014 there was a lawsuit against EA because, as it turns out, no college athletes were getting a cut of all the money EA was making despite the fact that they were literally in the game. But the silly old NCAA said no, student athletes are amateurs, you can't pay them. Because of this disagreement, College Football 14 was the last entry in the series. 10 years later, NCAA legislation has changed, EA brought it back, everyone is getting a paycheck, and I am a happy man. It has been so long since I've wanted to play a football game because Madden just isn't the same. The college game is just so much more wacky and offense-oriented. The variety of teams and colors and uniforms and playbooks is just so refreshing. I grin from ear to ear as I play this. Except when I throw like 3 interceptions in a game because reading defenses is somehow harder than reading bosses in Elden Ring. Anyways, July comes to a close and some of those real-life issues that have been sleeping wake up. Suddenly, I'm about to have a lot less time to play. August is tough in many ways. There was a death in the family. My wife's grandma passes, and we spend a good bit of time traveling and helping with the arrangements. As you can imagine, the backlog is far from my priority around this time. I write and read the eulogy at the funeral, my first time ever doing that, and it's simultaneously extremely difficult and an extreme honor. But where one flower wilts, another one blooms. You see, during those 2 weeks as Mimi's health was declining, my wife and I also had a wave of clarity about the future and decide it's time to buy a house, which is a plot twist neither I nor my wallet had on our bingo card for this year. I'm thrilled, but if you thought we were busy before, if I thought reading defenses and bosses in Elden Ring was tough, it was only because I had never jumped through the hoops of buying a home. Holy shit! Get away from me, get away from me. What the fuck is going on? No! Needless to say, between renovations and travel and moving and spending more money than I thought I'd ever have in life, August and September are spent playing very little, if any, video games because, keep in mind, I'm still making videos. So when I'm not on the go, I'm locked in, trying to ensure that I can afford this damn house I just bought. But when I am on the go, I have time for the game I least saw coming this year. Time is a funny thing, because As a kid, these games were easy, but as an adult, I am getting absolutely bodied by Watson. Thanks to the Apple Store finally allowing emulators, I make an absolute slog through Pokemon Emerald. The nostalgia is there, obviously. It's fun to dust off this old guide I had from back in the day. Man, I really wish we still did these. But the real meat and potatoes of my time is spent in battles having interactions like this. Why the fuck did I not pick Mudkip? I also wonder as children how we ever played this without this fast forward feature. I know the game down, and I do make some pretty substantial progress on Xenoblade 3 around this time as well. My goodness, I am finding myself caring about these characters like they're my kids. It's a little grindy and slow in spots, but this story is sneaking up on me. There is a sequence mid-game where the status quo changes dramatically that reaches up into my chest and squeezes the life out of my heart. I feel color drain from my face at the genuine desperation some of these lines are read with. This won't get finished until October more than likely, but it's going to leave me absolutely devastated. I can tell. And once again, it becomes necessary for me to play a game for a video, which brings me to fear and hunger. My thoughts on this game are well established if you've seen this video, but I think it's brilliant in how much it does not apologize for what it is. Maddeningly difficult, a game of knowledge, a game that asks you to endure. I don't finish it because I don't have time yet, but I want to point out something extremely relevant to our backlog discussion. This is the first game all year that I don't finish. And if you didn't watch part 2, you will have missed how often I started a game and then abandoned it. Probably every month there was at least 1 or 2 games that I gave a go and then dropped after only a few hours. Of the 57 games I attempted, I only rolled credits on 34 of them. This year up to this point, I'm 23 for 24. And I didn't even really abandon Fear and Hunger as much as I just can't finish it right now. There's a lot going on, I've got a few other titles I want to get to first, but again, there is no cascade of abandons. I'm not picking up 80 things off the buffet and trying a bite of everything this year. Now, I'm finishing plates. And if that doesn't tell you how terrible of an idea the time limit is, I don't know what will. But most importantly, I think it shows that when you take out that critical flaw, the backlog spreadsheet method works wonders. It helps you decide, it encourages you to prioritize, it's perfect for tracking data, it builds good habits, it helps you finish your That's right. Is this method what's working? I've hardly touched the original list this year, even though I have been playing a ton. I've even played enough to have finished it by now, but here we are. There's gotta be more to the story here. It's Tuesday, the first day of October. I open my eyes to a new season. My nostrils inhale that crisp fall air. The move is all done. I'm on break from the channel to prep for the video you're currently watching. And all that's standing between me and a ton of backlog progress is this heavy-ass dog. Maybe it's time to actually lock into the O22, get some of this knocked out so that the video next month makes sense. But in my time off the grid, I completely forget that every game comes out this month. Metaphor, Silent Hill 2 Remake, Call of Duty, Until Dawn, Sparking Zero, Neva, Guilty Gear DLC, Romancing Saga, Dandadan. That's not even a game, but I fucking told y'all it was gonna pop off. Choice paralysis and excitement wombo combo me, but then I remember that I have unfinished business. There's only one real choice. It's to finish Xenoblade, isn't it? So I do just that. I finish Xenoblade Chronicles 3, the saga that began all the way back in May just to pacify the actual backlog. Playing this game as a slow burn was probably the best decision I could have made. Binging a game is fun, but it kind of happens and ends. You move on. It was a one weekend stand. But because of the pace of play, by the time I roll credits on Xenoblade, it feels like my journey was just as long as theirs. I've spent time thinking about them outside of playing. I've had time to grin about Uni and Tyon growing and facing their anxieties together. I've had time to reflect on Lance and Senna finding their self-worth together. I've had time to feel my heart swell at all those quiet little glances that Noah and Mio give each other when the other isn't looking. This game breaks me in two ways. One, because thinking back to how this backlog project begins reminds me that Etika will never get to play it, despite how much I'm sure he would have adored it. And the other way it breaks me concerns its ending and some other key plot points that I won't elaborate on because its story is going to be the main backbone of a video that I'm very excited to write. Man. It's still early October. With 7 of the O22 done now and these October releases now swarming, I have a decision to make. I can buy something new that I know I want to play, like Metaphor or Silent Hill, or I can make progress on the actual list. I do neither. Instead, I play something I've had my eye on for a while now. Animal Well. This game is the cutest, spookiest, vibiest, strangest little ride. It was fun to feel lost, but it was thrilling to also feel small, unsafe, and truly at the mercy of the elements. It's because of that fragility that the puzzles make you feel as clever as they do. Hell of a game. Next was Neva, and full disclosure, I did get a review code for this one. But it's been on my mental list for months since I first saw it announced because it's Nomada Studio, the same folks behind Gris. A game that is very close to my heart. I was admittedly skeptical because this game has combat in it and I wasn't sure if it would get in the way of the brilliant visual and musical storytelling that Nomada is known for, but I'm happy to be proven wrong. Sensational little game, so much to unpack from the story. Look for that video down the line.
I really am just like you.
1000 Times Resist is, the best way I can put it is, it's a game that genuinely feels like it's about everything. Somehow the main struggle, the characters, the way it's all framed like a stage play all intertwines in such a beautifully human way to tell a story that is unlike anything I have ever seen, leaves me in awe. This game approaches so many themes: religion, moving on, memories, communication, the enormity of time, parental relationships, sacrifice, sociology, philosophy, oppression, and somehow it does so without ever feeling like too much. Your brain almost processes the narrative like one of those infinite pictures you see online. Right now, it looks like one thing, you can digest that, but the closer you zoom in, the more you find hidden under the surface without the previous picture losing any meaning. Needless to say, I'll definitely be talking about this one in more detail in a future video because it's one of those games that you could write about 10 different times and have 10 different points. Should go without saying, but man, hecky grace. Imagine you've been working as a part of a crew on an interstellar shipment. Your job is simply to see that this load reaches its destination across space in one piece. Months are spent on this trip. You'll be paid handsomely once it's done, but one day curiosity gets the best of you and the crew. What exactly are we transporting? What is so important that it needs to make this lengthy haul across the solar system? So you open the storage bay and find mountains of boxes containing mouthwash. Every single box, mouthwash. The depth of the questions that follow are one of the things that makes mouthwashing such a profound little game. What is the point of a career? Why do we care about the people around us? What is the point of living a good life if we're just going to die one day? Is a good life enough? This game only takes me around 3 hours, but it has a handful of moments that make my soul itch. If you decide to play this, prepare to be uncomfortable, prepare to reflect, prepare to feel your grip on reality slip. The perfect little game to settle me into spooky season, and just what I need to return here.
In my restless dreams, I see that town. Silent Hill.
Last year, on Halloween night, I finished the original Silent Hill 2, my first time ever with the series, and this year, I do the exact same thing on the exact same day with the remake. I said earlier that I'm finding myself falling in love with survival horror, and that's true, but the original Silent Hill 2 doesn't make me love it. Horror is fun. It's exciting to be scared when it's fictional. It lets you explore emotions that you'd hope to never experience in your own life from a safe distance. But Silent Hill 2, both the original and the remake, do not do this for me. It's not fun. It's not thrilling. It's miserable. I hated being here, and I hate being here. And I say that as the highest compliment because that's the point. In many ways, Silent Hill is James's personal hell. He is here to suffer, not suplex zombies. It's a hauntingly beautiful exploration of a man's shame, an uncanny warped, that's the wrong game, an uncanny warped reflection of his guilt and sorrow. That's what made the original so profound, and that's what makes the remake equally, if not more, impactful. I can say this because playing the original only last year, I don't have nostalgia glasses on. Some of y'all owe Blooper Team an apology. This is a banger. I thought the remake did a tremendous job of retaining the spirit and expounding upon what made the original what it was. And my goodness, the acting and subtleties of the facial expressions are so heart-wrenchingly good. I mean, just look at James's eyes here. Look at Angela hesitate before she speaks. Listen to this performance from Luke Roberts.
I miss you so much.
With Halloween in the rearview and the O22 still looming, November arrives, and I really only have time for one more game before I start writing. It is something on the O22, and it's a game that deserves to end this story. There's something kind of beautiful in the idea that Chrono Trigger came out only a few months after I did. This is a game that has been available to me since literally the first day I could possibly pick up a controller and understand what I was doing. You could say that Chrono Trigger has been on my backlog the very longest because I've been waiting nearly all my life to play it. I've heard stories over the years, the timeless Akira Toriyama art, the stunning pixel work. I've listened to the soundtrack endless times because it's so iconic, and yet the otherworldly harmony of Corridors of Time still gives me chills the first time I arrive in the floating kingdom of Zeal. I could spend a lot of time talking about this game, the astonishing plot twists, the 30-year-old yet somehow near-perfect battle system, the charm of the writing, the way it cleverly uses the time travel mechanic, this fucking cat, but I'll simply end this story by talking about one little side quest. In 1000 AD, there is this desert, right? It spans a ton of the map, but if you go back to 600 AD, there is a small house and a woman living in it named Fiona. If you choose to leave your friend Robo, who is unaffected by the ravages of aging, with the help of Fiona and all of her ancestors, he will plant, till, and fertilize this area to restore the vegetation. You hop in your time machine. Moments pass for you, but 400 years pass for him. Now in 1000 AD, you find a lush forest with a shrine where the house was. And it's here you find your friend again. In a journey where you time travel a lot, it is a late game moment that grounds you and reminds you of the vastness of time, how just one tiny decision, one small moment can blossom into an entire forest spanning a valley. And it's as I sit at this campfire and reflect on my time with Chrono Trigger before the final act, I think about a 5-month-old baby lying asleep in a crib and a team of people that poured their hearts into a beautiful work of art celebrating the release of their new game. And I think about how, despite almost 30 years from that moment, those two things would find each other and cap off this backlog story that I'm telling you about now. I realize this is pretty melodramatic, but this is what this game did to me. And it gives me a mountain of peace that despite how desperately I want to find the man games, and despite how little progress I made on this list over all this time, I've got nothing but time. If Chrono Trigger found its way to that infant, if my wife and I found our way to this house, if that person found their way to you, if that seed found its way into a burgeoning forest, then even if not now, I'll find my way to these games. So yeah, the backlog still technically didn't get done in 2024. However, I don't know if done is ever a state that I want to achieve. Because while many of us might like to be at a point where we only play new games, there will always be something older that you missed that sneaks up on you and absolutely blows you away. So I need to find a way to balance new games and old games. There must be a way to healthily work on both your front log and your backlog. This is actually one of the questions I still saw pretty often after Part 2 was published. What about new stuff? How do we decide realistically what we play upon release versus what we decide to catch on sale, while also ensuring that we work on our original 22s, or whatever number you're at? And that's a question I might have an answer to, but, well, this is where 2025 comes in, and this is where you enter the picture. Next year, I'm doing it again. Next November, the backlog will be completed. No removals or abandons like last year, but also room for trying new stuff like this year. But don't worry, this is no 80+ game endeavor. I've learned my lesson. I have a data-driven way to ensure that this time I do in fact finish the backlog, or at least this iteration of it. But I need your help to build it. Here's how it's gonna work. I'm gonna point at you. Really drive my point. I've compiled the month-to-month data from the last 2 years because I have that now. Some interesting stats that I think you'll find valuable. Despite how hard I worked on the backlog last year, from November to November, both runs, I spent 500 hours gaming on the first go and 508 hours on the second. In both years, I beat about 2 to 3 games per month on average and spent about 41 hours gaming per month on average. From a data standpoint, the only real difference is that I finished 97% of what I played this year instead of 59% from last year. And of course, I was way happier this year. No big deal. But seeing this data, I realized that no matter how I squirm or try harder to organize it, this is simply how much time I have to play on a month-to-month basis. And of course it varies, there are hot months and cold months, but seeing this reveals how doomed I was attempting that 1600 hour in a year goal. Knowing this, I can now make a realistic backlog for next year, a backlog that looks like this. What you're looking at is a new format for 2025, and you'll notice that much of it is to be determined. You see, my strategy is this. I've discovered that as time goes on, my interest in games varies heavily. I might catch a wild hare tomorrow and become obsessed with a campy visual novel. I might wake up next week and decide I need to understand all of Kingdom Hearts. Dear God, please don't let that happen to me. But this new backlog format allows for that. Based on the data, I figure that I can get around 33 games in next year, give or take a couple depending on how long to beat times. I have a long list of older games I might be interested in. I have a long list of new titles I might find myself enamored with upon release day. Since I can't play everything, I'm going to block out a schedule to be filled with games as time goes on. This way, it's a practical goal at no more than 3 games a month, yet does ensure that I'm making healthy progress on the ever-expanding miasma of games that I want to play. You've probably noticed that each month there are 2 Daryl picks that I'll be filling in as time goes on at my discretion, and 1 fan pick that you get to decide. In part 2, there was much to do about certain games getting cut. Everyone was very courteous when their game didn't get picked, I assure you. So this year, you guys have the chance to right all the wrongs. It's up to you what the fan picks are for 2025. You'll vote for 1 game. I don't know why I did like a shove it up your ass, You'll vote for 1 game, and then I'll take the top 11 out of all the votes. Whatever the 11 picks are, I promise to roll credits on each of them in 2025. All I ask is that you 1, check the list of games I have played so that you don't waste your vote, and 2, please try and keep the how long to beat 30 hours or less. If enough people vote for the Kerbal Space Program, I guess I'll indulge you, but yeah, but please go easy on me. I want stuff that you all think I need to play, stuff that's a crime that I've missed, stuff that you think are potential game contenders. I want to be changed, I want to be broken, I want to be obnoxious with how much I liked it. As long as you understand all of that, there is a well-marked voting link in the description below. Go crazy. I'll announce in 2 weeks what the results were, and Like last year, you can track my progress on the backlog live if you want via the Google Excel spreadsheet, also in the description. I guess I'll let you guys see it again. It was kind of fun, this being so interactive and such a saga. By the way, this new format doesn't mean I'm capped at 3 games a month. If I find myself done early or ahead of pace, I might get an early start on the next fan game, or I might even just sneak in something else that interests me. But I think what this ultimately does is it sets me up for a healthy pace with the flexibility to also not stress or miss out on anything that I really want to play. My hypothesis that I plan to sort of test in 2025 is that as backloggers, we should be grabbing this data for ourselves to set realistic expectations. Don't just track how long it took to beat things, but also track when you did, how many things you beat, and figure out realistically what your schedule allows for. And then maybe another winning strategy is to make a partial backlog for the year that allows room for new releases, lets you indulge on whims, and ensures progress on what you have on deck. Maybe your fan picks are just stuff you've really been putting off. Maybe you do an old game a month, a new game a month, and a competitive game a month, but ultimately you set yourself up for success and just budget your time well. And hell, maybe this is too complicated. This might be way too much, and you're just gonna play what you want, and when you feel like it. Not a damn thing wrong with that. Enjoy yourself. This is just for people like me that stress and maximize their time to fight off the existential dread. We're in it together, baby. All of that to say, I think this backlog project might just become an annual thing. I've learned so much about myself in the past 2 years doing this, and frankly, it's the video I have looked forward to the most throughout the year 3 times now. Not to mention, I do think that of all the tangents this channel goes down, this might be the one people get the most practical advice from. The love for this series and the results that people come forward with continues to blow my mind. So I look forward to seeing what 2025 brings with this new and improved backlogging method. If you decide to revise your backlog and do something similar, I can't wait to hear how it goes. But whether you decide to change up how you approach your list of undiscovered adventures, or if you just let them find you, remember to breathe in the details, to cherish the moments, and ultimately to follow your heart, not a spreadsheet. Hey there, thank you so very much for watching. There was a lot of video here, so if you made it this far, you're breathtaking. Like literally, like breathtaking, like I'm out of breath from reading all that. I'm so happy to have this as a series now. I was getting the giggles making the thumbnail. Anyways, if you like what you see here and you want to support the show, the best way to do so is via Patreon. For $1 a month, you can get all kinds of bonus content like updates, creative input, editing live streams, bloopers, and your name in the credits like you see here. You might even be one of the monthly featured patrons like Chris McLaren, Luritz, Windmill, Evan Smith, 767, Acebreaker 7, Nishi Mia, and Matt Wilson. Thanks again for watching. Like, share, subscribe, drink water, and have yourself a damn good one.